Okay, so tonight we were going to do the Iyunim for chapter 36 that we started last week, which was the idea of Ish Mashiach and the idea of what we need to do, Lahavili Mashiach, how we have to practically be part of that. So we'll do those Iyunim first, and then we should be able to have time to start our next chapter, Parak Lamed Zayin, where we are going to talk about the idea of being a Shutaf LaKadosh Baruch Hu, be a partner to Hashem. And basically that is the concepts of why we have to take that achrayus. In other words, someone that ever told us he's giving it over to us, he was giving us that achrayus and why that is so important. Okay, so let's start with the Iyunim first. So his galos tapas abriya v'doren zedafka. So the revelation of the point, the main reason or the goal of all of creation, why was that dafka in our generation? Okay, I just want to get my little dotty thingy. Okay, so b'tzaycha perach uvo divrei harebi shetzarach liyos nikar b'chol pu'ula shel Yehudi hanakuda v'atachlis ha'achas v'ayichida hagilui shel Mashiach tzekenu. So we have spoken in our last class that in Parak, this Parak, which is Parak Lamed Vav, we looked at the words of the Rebbe, where the Rebbe said that it has to be recognizable in every single action that a Jew does, that the main point of every single thing that we do is this revelation of Mashiach. So even though you could say the whole point of a Yid is always this main point, we're moving toward Mashiach. So of course, this isn't something new. In essence, this has always been the reason for Torah mitzvahs and everything that we do. However, it was never stressed so much. It's only now, in our generation, as we get closer and closer to the coming of Mashiach, we find there's a very particular and extra emphasis on this concept. So perhaps we can give a mashal of why it is like that. And what's a mashal? What can we use? So we have a man who builds himself a house. So of course we know the way things work, and this is the my motto in my consultancy business. So if my that the end action is, of course, what we have to think about first. So if a person builds a house, right, the first thing that he has to think about that's in his head is that end result. He imagines what it's going to look like at the end. Kate said, what this house will look like when it is complete. So to all the So of course we know if you're building a home, you can imagine whatever you want in your head about what it's going to look like. But in order for the house to actually be built that way, you have to get down to the nitty-gritty details, and you have to put those details into the right place, into every single stage of building. And after that, you actually physically can do it. And then at the end, you have the house. So of course, we know from building, you have plans, you have to go to the architect, you have to make the plans. Everything has to be built exactly to plan, to the detail. And then all the people have to come in and do their part until we finally have the house at the end. Now, at the time when the actual building is going on, it's not necessarily so recognizable at the time of building of exactly what the final product is going to look like. So to all the workers who come in, the electrician, so he comes in, he does his bit, he pulls the wires through all the walls and he puts in the plugs, but he doesn't know necessarily what the whole final house is going to look like. He sees his little part. He doesn't see how it's all going to come together at the end necessarily. It could also be that the workers who come in and do their little part don't even know at all what the final result is supposed to be. But at the end, if everyone does their part, once the building is completed, then everybody sees the goal, final goal of what this was all about. So then everyone can go back and say and recognize how every single little detail in the house was really part of that goal that was the original will and desire of the Balabayis who built this house. So at the time it's happening, everyone sees a little bit. They don't necessarily see the full picture. It's only later that they see how everything they did really contributed to this final end result. Now we could use this mashal and say it's the same thing applies to what we need to do in bringing Mashiach. We know that at the very beginning, the whole purpose of this world was Hashem, who's the Balabas, really. His whole purpose is that there should be a dwelling place for Hashem in this world. Amna. Bizman ha'avayda by nivnes kaviyach la'adir la'yizbarach. Yitachin shebnei Yisrael ha'poilim einam ra'im es matar ha'sayfi shel lahavili ma'is Mashiach v'loy ra'im ketza kol prat ma'ilach la'is matar ha'sayfis. Very possible. So even though that's the avayda, at the time this avayda is going on to build this dwelling place for Hashem, it's very possible, just like builders and workers and plumbers and electricians who build a home, that the workers who are Bnei Yisrael don't see that final goal of bringing Mashiach. And they don't recognize how the little details that they're doing is actually bringing to that final goal either. However, as they get closer and closer to the end result, then as they get closer to the end, they start seeing and understanding the final goal and what all their work is really leading to. So we could say, so we could say that this is the reason why this whole concept that Hashem wanted a dwelling place in this world has really been revealed only in the later generations with the revelation of Hasidus Chabad by the Alter Rebbe. Because as we're getting closer, it's more recognizable what it is that we are trying to do. And then even more from generation to generation since the times of the Alter Rebbe, till our time, because now the Avodah is finished, as the Rebbe told us many times, and we are ready for Mashiach. Hizman zeh hu al derech hamasav by nishma havniya v'skals hakavana shahayis b'bayis b'milechatchila. Because now we're in the situation where it's like the building is finished, and we now can recognize and see the intention of why this place was being built to begin with. Lachain, therefore, ke'es efshar v'tzarech li'rais b'chol prat b'ivadaso shel Yisrael. And that's why in our times it's possible, and therefore we are required to see in every detail of our Avodah that the main point and purpose of all of it, the one and only purpose of all of it, is to have the revelation of Mashiach. Now, this same point, we could say the same point in other words, as it's explained in Chassidus, Shakasher Adam writes of Asais mindset. So Chassidus explains, when a person wants to do something in order for him to have some sort of pleasure at the end, so a person might decide he wants to do something, and he knows that by doing this thing, he's going to have pleasure at the end. It doesn't mean that at the time that he's doing the actions, that he feels the pleasure that he's going to have at the end. What does he feel while he's doing it? He just feels the ruts, like the desire that he has to do this thing so that he can get the pleasure. But the pleasure isn't necessarily in the action that he's doing. It's just he knows that he's going to get the pleasure at the end. It's only when it's finished. Then there's a revelation of that pleasure that he has in other words, his intention of the pleasure that he wanted to have, and he knew he was going to have from the very beginning. And so too, we could say in the nimshal of what we just said before. As again, we explain in Chassidus. The true pleasure for HaKadosh Baruch Hu is to have a dir b'tachtonim. This was the reason for creation to begin with. Hashem wants that pleasure of having a dwelling place here on earth. So there's the oineg in the pleasure in having a dir b'tachtonim, and then there's the rashon, the desire of the mitzvahs of Bnei Yisrael fulfilling the mitzvahs, because through the mitzvahs we will then materialize the intention of creation, which is for that year. But during the time that we're actually doing the avodah, as we are doing the avodah, what we have in a very revealed way is the fact that we are doing the ratzon of Hashem. Hashem's ratzon in actual doing mitzvahs. It's only when we finish the avodah, only then, when the avodah is completed, do we have that revelation of Hashem's pleasure from the completed dwelling place that he desired. And again, therefore, as we mentioned before, it's davka in these later generations, specifically in our last generation that we're in. And specifically after the announcement of the Rebbe to us that all the avodah has been finished, then the pleasure of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in having a dwelling place is revealed. And then it's also revealed how Hashem is apparent in every single detail in all of creation. Okay, so we have this idea that the ultimate goal is adir b'tachtonim. That's the oineg, that's the pleasure, and the ratzon is in the avodah that we are doing to reach that final goal. Now, next section, when we talk about this oineg, what do we mean by oineg? So you have to understand that ein l'mayla me'oineg. There's nothing more, there's nothing above or higher than oineg, pleasure itself. Rivki, I see you're here. Would you like to continue?
אין למעלה מעייני. משהגענו לעניין זה שדיר בתחתינו הוא כביכול התענוג הפנימי של הקדוש ברוך הוא, we reach this idea that the dir b'tachtonim is the inner will of Hashem, the inner pleasure of Hashem. אפשר להמשיך ולספיינים בזה עוד, ועל פי זה להוסיף ביר בדברי הרבה שהובאו לעיל בתוך הפרק. So we can continue and contemplate more on this and delve into this according to what, and to add an explanation on the words of the Rebbe that we mentioned above in the parak. B'maimer sheyatza l'or Chanukah shnas tavshin beis, yesh nesbainos ba'omek nafshay shel ha'adam, lahagdir sehevda ben koyach harotzim va'onek. In the Maimer that was printed for Hanukkah in Tavshin Beis, so there's a deep explanation of about the nefesh of a person to understand the difference between koyach haratzain and oinek. Al pi hamavur b'mekaymes Rav Mitzaras Chassidus, kol koyach magashmiyim v'aruchniim muf'alim al yidei haratzain. And as it's explained in many places in Chassidus, that all the powers of a person, the physical and the spiritual, are come about through Ratzain. Shekasher Adam roitze b'mashu v'nimshach elav, harei hu yaseh kol b'chtei lagi lekach. When a person wants something and is drawn to it, so he will do all that he can to reach it. Amnam nishmas upnimius haratzain hu ha'oineg. But the soul and the inner idea of Ratzain is actually the pleasure. Shekasher yesh la'adam oineg b'davar mesuyam harehu maniyo ma'iris haratzin le'sedavar v'ratzin yifal al kol ha'koches lahashlam ha'oineg shel ha'adam. So when a person has pleasure in a certain thing, then that arouses the Ratzain for that thing, and then the Ratzain arouses the koches in order to bring about the pleasure of the person. Well, Kach Mavar had a mimer. Sheesh nachila gadol bein pu'ulas haratzain al kol hakoches levein pu'ulas ha'oineg. And as the Rebbe explains in that mimer, that there's a big difference between the effect the Ratzain has on the koches and the way oineg works. Shepulas haratzain ala koches hi b'derech shlitu memshala shu machriach as hakoches lefol behetel meratzainai. So the Ratzain, the effect that the Ratzain has on the koches is in a way of domination, that it forces the koches to act according to his will. Ach kasher yesh la'adam oineg b'davar oiseh hu oiseh. Ein ze sha'oineg sholet al kol hakoches b'derech hechrech, ela sha'koches mishtanim liyos k'moi ha'oineg. When a person has pleasure in something that he's doing, so the oineg, the pleasure is not ruling over the koches and forcing it, but the koches themselves become like the oineg. V'dugma lezeh b'derech efshar. Adam shemoid ayef, ach yesh le'rotzen oiz latzliach, u'l'sayim mesima ha'yimedes b'fonav, harehu yisamitz yizgabra la'yefus v'yisayim es mesima l'mreis ha'yefus. So we can give an example. A person is very tired, but he has a strong desire to succeed and to finish the task that he's in middle of. And he will work hard and overcome his tiredness, and he will finish the job even though he's tired.
We can all relate to that, especially as women. Yes. Push through exhaustion and say, we need to get this done, right? We don't want to, whatever it might be, we don't want to wake up to the same mess, or we're just in the middle of doing something, we have to get it done. So we push through that exhaustion. Yeah. But
if he has a big pleasure in that which he's doing, so he's not even going to feel the tiredness. Yeah, I guess. So here the Rebbe proves that the will of a person and the powers of his nefesh are two separate things, that one is ruling over the other. But pleasure is not something additional to the koches of the nefesh of the person, but it is the innermost and the actual energy, true energy of the koches of the person.
This really touches upon what we ended off our brain last week when we were talking about, when we have pleasure in something, right? We say my pleasure. When it's a pleasure, we don't see it as work or as a burden, right? Because it really is, our koches are really completely one with whatever that oineg is.
Right, but in the paragraph that you read, it said that the oineg brings about the Ratzain brings about the koches, that it's all three. And here it's saying that
what we said, but there's two sides to this. On one hand, we say, yes, a person usually, when you want to do something, you're thinking about the long-term effect of anything that you want to do. And the long-term effect, you want to do something because you imagine the pleasure, the enjoyment you're going to have at the end. While you end up doing it, you don't necessarily have enjoyment. You just, you need to do this because you're getting toward an end. So in that way, it's like things happen like that. And that's in everything in life, whatever it might be. You're putting on, you're doing something with your students in school, you're going to put on a performance, right? There's going to be tremendous enjoyment at the end when it's all finished. the nitty-gritty and the day-to-day things that you have to do to get that up on stage and get it all happening, get students doing everything together and to get it, it's not so pleasurable necessarily, the whole process, but you have a rutzon to get it done because you know of the einig at the end of it. That's generally how things work. But now we're making another point. And that is that rutzon, as you see, even with things like that, when you say you have a rutzon for something, you want to do it, then you do it and you have to push through the non-pleasurable activities of whatever it is that you're doing because it's just rutzon, right? But when you have einig in something, then you're not pushing through because your kaichais are transformed.
Right.
Because when it's pleasure, it's not work. Right? Rutzon could be work to get to some other goal, but pleasure is never work. When it's pleasurable, that's why there's even saying people say, if you don't want to work a day in your life, do something you love. If you have pleasure in what you're doing, you don't feel like work, right? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. So all of this is a mashal to the relationship between Hashem and His world. So if we're talking about the chitzenius hakeser, which is arach anpin, the rulership Hashem has on the world is like a will that is ruling over the koiches. Ach mitzad pnimius hakeser atik ulamayla mizeh pnimius atik hayachash l'kodesh baruch hu la'olam hu k'mo yachash la'oineg l'koiches hanefesh v'yoser mizeh. But we're talking about the inner idea of Keser, which is Atik, or even higher than that, the Pnimius of Atik. So the relationship of Hashem with the world is like the Oineg to the Koiches HaNefesh, and even more so. Of Loshen HaMaimer, Pnimius Atik, hu bechlalos Atzmos Ein Sof. The Lagabi Atzmos Ein Sof, ein she'ech metzia shechutz mimena. Mimenu v'adraba, amitis hamtzoi yisparach hi hamatzia shel kol hanemtzoi. And as the Rebbe says in the Maimer, the pnimius of Atik is Atzmos Ein Sof. And when we're talking about Atzmos Ein Sof, so there's nothing besides it. That Hashem is the mitzias of everything that is. L'chein alidei gilui pnimius Atik nirgash b'chol davar shamitzias shaloi gufa hi elikus. So through the revelation of Pnimius of Atik, so everything that exists will feel that it is Elikus. So seemingly we could use this also in what we are talking about here. When we're talking about dir b'tachtainim, sheyeshe kavona de dir b'tachtainim misyacheses la'atzmos ein sof pnimis atik, v'hi kaviyachol ha'oinig hachi pnimi shaloi, v'hi sibas abriya kula, hari oinig ze nimtza b'soch kol prat b'briya, v'hu mitziusoi ha'mitis. So the kavona of dir b'tachtainim is connected to atzmos ein sof, which is pnimis atik. And this is the einig, the most inner part of it, and this is the reason for the whole creation. So this einig is found in every detail of creation, and it is its existence. And therefore, we can see in every single detail in creation how it is reflected in it, the purpose of the purpose of Atzmos, which is that it should be a dir b'tachtenim.
Reminds me of, the thing they say when you cut an apple, the whole thing people say you cut an apple in a certain way, and you see like Yud Kei Vav Kei, you see Hashem's name in the cut of the apple, you know what I'm talking about? Right? So this idea that really that is the purpose of everything. So it's got to be reflected literally in every single thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
וזה אפשר אולי לבאר as divrei harebe b'sichas simchas Torah tavshnun beis. And maybe with this, we could explain the words of the Rebbe and the Sicha Simchas Torah Tavshin Beis. Nidrush b'chayev shel Yehudi, sheyachush v'yargish b'chol inyanav mamish she'einayd milvadeh. So a person has to feel in all his inyanim einayd milvadeh. Zaysemeres le'rak shakavana v'atachla shel kol inyani ha'olam hi elikus. ובמילא ודוסי באופן שכל מסך לשם שמיים וכל דרכך דאיו, אבל ישנה מציאס של כל מסך ודרכך, רק תכליסם היא קדושה. אלא יסר מזו, שענייני העולם עצמם הם אליקוס, ובמילא מלכתחילה כלל לא נרגשת שום מציאס אחרת כיוון שאין עד מלבד. So what does it mean? That not only that the purpose of everything in the world is elikus, and therefore his avoda is l'shem shamayim and b'chol derech hadaehu, but in that case there is a chol, and there is masecha, and there is darkecha, but their purpose is kedusha. Okay, so the Rebbe says it's even more than that. That the Inyani Olam themselves are elikus. So there is no other metzias. It's only einayd milvadai. It's not like you have something and you're using it for elikus, but it is elikus to start with. So from the Rebbe's words, we could understand that there is a way of avodah that is higher than kol derech hachadehu, but the Rebbe doesn't explain exactly what it is. Amnam, al pianal efshar lakasher bein advarim v'loimer shezeu oifen avodah shel kol yimei chayecha lehavi l'maisa Mashiach. But according to what we learned earlier, we can make a connection and say that this is like the avodah of kol yimei chayecha lehavi l'maisa Mashiach. Ki b'avodah shel kol masach yu l'shem shamayim, shemishtamish b'chol hanyanim l'avodah Hashem b'lvad, harei Yehudi mistakel al hanivra k'davar shemitzad atzma yochol l'shamish l'nyanim acherim. So in the avodah of Kol Masach L'Shem Shemayim, when he's using everything in this world just for Hashem, so the Yid looks at this creation that could be used for other things, but he decided to make it holy through using it for Avodas Hashem. So in that case, elikus is something in addition to the existence of the creation. Ach b'avodah shel kol yimei chayecha lehavi l'maisa Mashiach, azay hayehudi roya ketzad kol prat b'briya shel dira b'tachtonim. Kol prat b'briya mitzad etzem mehusay moilech le'inyan hakoli shel dira b'tachtonim. V'zui mehusay hamitis m'lechatchila. But in the avodah of kol yimei chayecha lehavi l'maisa Mashiach, so the Yid sees how every detail of the creation in itself brings about is in essence, and it brings to dira tachtonim, and that is its real essence from the beginning. And so he sees how things in this world itself are elikus from the beginning. ובסגנון הנ"ל, שבavodah shel kol masach l'shem shamayim, hayehudi moiser es kol inyanav, l'ratzon ha'elyon, hasholet al kol inyani abriya. ובavodah shel kol yimei chayecha lehavi l'maisa Mashiach, hayehudi megale b'chol inyanav es ha'oineg ha'elyon shehu hu hamatzias hamitis shelahem. So we can say that the avodah of kol masach l'shem shamayim is when a Yid gives over all his inyanim to the ratzon of Hashem, which rules over all inyanim in the world. But the avodah of kol yimei chayecha lehavi l'maisa Mashiach, that's when a Yid reveals in all his inyanim the inner pleasure, which is its real essence. Should finish. Valderach zev shaloimar benagei l'chol Yehudi prati. Shekinal b'seicha perach etzem esi usay hi lahavi l'maisa Mashiach. And accordingly, we could say that this is in relation with every private person. As we learned in the parak, that his Etzem HaMetzias is to bring Mashiach, and this will permeate every detail in his life. וכנ"ל בהגדרה של תרס החסידות, עצם מציאוסי היינו העונג שלי, שזוהי הנקודה הכי פנימית בנפש. So what is, as it's explained in Chassidus, עצם מציאוסי is his oneg, which is the most inner part of his soul. וכיוון שהעונג הוא הפנימי של כל הכוחות, לפיכך כאשר העונג שלי הוא בעניין של להביא ימייסם משיח, במילא מסגל שזוהי המהות האמיתית של כל כוחות הנפש בכל פרט חייו. And because Eineg is the most pneumistic of the pneumius of all the kaichais, so when his Eineg is in bringing Mashiach, so there will be revealed the true essence of all his kaichas and nefesh and all the details of his life. Wow.
Wow. Right?
The Einig is the actual essence, or it's just the closest that we could get to experiencing essence?
Einig comes from essence. The Einig comes from Atmos.
Right. So the essence
Something
is
higher than that.
Is it possible, meaning when someone experiences essence, is that automatically a pleasurable experience? Like, is it automatic that it's together, or is there such a thing as, because sometimes we say, like, you know, in this world, when we do a mitzvah, for example, so it's the essence, but we're not experiencing any pleasure, but it's the real, like, we have atmos in this world, meaning before Mashiach comes, but we talk about it a lot of times, like, you know, separate from the pleasure, meaning, like, in Gan Eden, there's pleasure, but there's no atmos, and here there's atmos, but not necessarily is there the pleasure of it. So I guess that's maybe the atmos is like hidden. I don't know, like not revealed.
Well, and when we say that in Gan Eden there's pleasure but not atmos, that's because they're getting the pleasure from the ha'ara of Elokus. They don't have atmos, they have a ha'ara of atmos, because atmos is down here. The higher it is, the lower it comes. So do we feel the pleasure? I think we have to be in touch with it to be able to feel that pleasure, which is what we're trying to say, is that we have this Lahavli Mashiach we mentioned at the end of our last class, that you could say, well, okay, so how can we reach this level? Like we said, we have to take the achrayus, just like the Rebbe did. The Rebbe had that, you know, desire his whole life when he was a child, and you can say, okay, so how am I supposed to reach that level if I'm not like the Rebbe? And we said, because every person has that nitzas of Mashiach within them, we have that atmos within us, but we have to be in touch with it. We have to recognize that it's there. So when we just go through the avodah as such, when we're doing the ratzon of Hashem, that's not necessarily pleasurable. Right, that's where we're kind of forcing ourselves. When you think about like the avodah of Kabbalah's it's the idea that there's not any pleasure, there's no self in that. We're just doing it because we know this is what Hashem wants. But a higher level of that is really to be in touch with that premise of this whole thing is for a dear b'tachtainim. So it means it's all about that's the true pleasure that Hashem has, and therefore when we have our everyday, like we said last lesson, when we see that as our everyday tachlis and avodah and the pleasure in that, then we are tapping into really the essence of who we are, because the essence, that atmos, is also part of us. But we have to be in touch with it to be able to reveal it and to feel it.
It's so, if you think about it, like something like Miftzayim and let's say the camps we did as girls and our shluchos, it's like the Rebbe made it so pleasurable to us. Like we just do it because this is like just what we want to do. and without even thinking, what is this big responsibility and all the hard work and everything. But this is just, when our kids just are thrilled to be able to go to a new place and to find karkachtas and everything. Everybody just gets so much pleasure out about it that the Rebbe really, really gave that to us. It's amazing.
Yeah. I think though that we have to sometimes like remind ourselves about that, because I think as we get into the daily maybe routine of what we do, we can lose sight of that pleasure and that excitement of when something was new. And we really do have to like be in touch with it. And perhaps again, when the Rebbe said the direct way to bring Mashiach is through learning, I feel so strongly that when you learn and when you understand these things intellectually, then you can start practicing putting it into place. But if you don't know it, you don't know what it is that you need to be meditating on or practicing, or what attitude you're supposed to be, working on. Okay, so we still have 20 minutes. Let's go into the next chapter. Parak Lamed Zayin. Shutavla Kadosh Baruch Hu. So this idea of being achrayus for something, it's really being a partner with Hashem. And our question here is, Madua yesh l'hudi achrayus al bias Mashiach? Why taka do we have that responsibility to bring Mashiach? Because that's what we said. The Rebbe gave us the achrayus, but why? Why is it like that? Why do we have to have the responsibility? Liba, I see you are here. Would you like to read? Liba, are you there?
I could read in the meantime, but maybe Devorah, do you want to read?
Okay, hi, I'm sorry.
Here's Liba.
I don't know how to press the button. It takes me a few seconds till I get to the button. Okay. I mean, if Ricky wants to read, with pleasure, yeah, I don't care.
No, Liba, I'm happy you're here.
אוקיי, שותף לקדוש ברוך הוא. מדוע יש ליהודי אחריות על ביאת המשיח? בפרקים הקודמים הובאו דברי הרבי אודות האחריות שיש לכל יהודי להביא לימות המשיח. שלכן, disappeared. שלכן עליו לטכס עצה כיצד לזרז את ביאת המשיח וכולי, ועד שעניין זה נעשה כל מהותו ועצם מציאותו של היהודי. So in the previous chapters, we brought what the Rebbe said about the responsibility that every Yid has to bring Mashiach. That's why he has to find the ideas how to make it happen quicker. Until this inyan, it should be all this essence and all this reality of the Yid. ובפרק זה יתבאר בעזרת השם, על פי דבריו של הרבי, כיצד עניין זה משתלב בעניין הכללי של עבודת השם, והקשר של יהודי עם הקדוש ברוך הוא. So in this chapter, he will explain in Mitzvah Hashem, according to the Rebbe's sichas, how this inyan is being part of the closeness of inyan of Avodas Hashem and the connection to Hashem, of a Yid with Hashem. ובהקדים, שאלה פשוטה שמתבקשת מאליה. בכל הדורות ידעו יהודים שהם עבדי השם, ותפקידם בעולם הוא לבצע את רצון השם בתרי"ג המצוות. והם אכן עשו זאת בקבלת עול ובמסירות נפש, מבלי להיכנס לחשבונות מה יצא מזה, ולאן כל זה מוביל. So we have to start with a simple question that is being asked by itself. In all the previous generations, even they worked Hashem, and they knew that their
They were servants of Hashem. Yeah, they were servants of Hashem. Yeah.
And their purpose is, in the word, is to make Hashem's will in the Tariag mitzvahs, and the Taka did this with the Kabbalah's oil and Mesiras Nefesh, without going to Cheshbonus, to calculations what will come from it and towards where it brings. היהודי אומנם ידע שהוא צריך להאמין בביאת המשיח ולחכות לה, בלי לקחת אחריות על בוא הגאולה. הוא טקס עצה כיצד לקרב את ביאת המשיח, ככל המושגים שהרבי הכניס. ואם כן, מהיכן הביא הרבי את הגישה הזאת ביהדות? So the Yid Taka know that he has to believe in Mashiach and wait for Mashiach, but he didn't have to take responsibility to bring Mashiach for the Geula. And didn't have to think of ideas how to make it happen closer. And all the expression that the Rebbe brought. Then the question is, so from where come those ideas that the Rebbe, where come this attitude that the Rebbe brought in Yiddishkeit? ועל פי דברי הרבי בכמה מקומות, אפשר אולי להציע ביאור בזה. So according to what the Rebbe spoke in a few places, we can bring an explanation. ונקודת הדברים, שאכן יש כאן שני רבדים בהתקשרות של יהודי עם הקדוש ברוך הוא. So we can say we can explain that there is two levels of being מקושר to the Eibashter. בגלוי, היהודי הוא מציאות בפני עצמו, חוץ מהקדוש ברוך הוא, ואזי היחס שלו לקדוש ברוך הוא כעבד אל אדונו ומלכו, שההתקשרות שלו עם הקדוש ברוך הוא היא על ידי קבלת עול, והתמסרות פנימית למלא את רצון השם בתרי"ג המצוות שלו, מבלי להיכנס לחשבונות מעבר לזה. So the first level is that we I don't know what was before. So the first one, so what we see from Begoloi, so the Yid is a separate entity besides Hashem, and then his connection to his attitude to Hashem, relationship to Hashem is like a servant to his king, to his master, and then the itzkashus with the Kadosh Baruch Hu is going through Kabbalah's all and inner, what's the word? Dedication to do Hashem's rotten, that is, we see it with Taryag mitzvahs and without going to any חשבונס. אמנם, בפנימיות ובהלם, מציאותו האמיתית של יהודי היא דבר אחד עם עצמותו יתברך, ולפיכך הוא נחשב בדוגמת שותף לקדוש ברוך הוא. But if we look in the inner level, so there is no Mitzias of Ayid, and Mitzias of Ayid is one thing with the essence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why he is considered like a partner with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. ששותף אמיתי הוא שותף בכל העניינים, הן בתאווה של הקדוש ברוך הוא לדירה בתחתונים, והן באחריות על השלמת והגשמת תאווה זו בפועל. So a real partner, he is a partner in all the Iyunim, and is also partner in the type of the Eibashter to have a dira b'tachtonim, and also in the responsibility to complete and fulfill this taiva actually. וכעת, בעומדנו לקראת בוא הגאולה השלמה, שאז תתגלה המציאות האמיתית של יהודי, כפי שהוא מציאות אחת עם הקדוש ברוך הוא, צריכה להיות כבר עכשיו עבודה מעין זה. So now we're standing very close to the Mashiach, to the Geula, and then our real Metzias will be revealed, that we take one essence with Hashem. That's why now already we have to start doing this avodah, like similar to this avodah. And that's why we have to be now already kind of partners with the Eibashter. And like we'll explain this later.
I'm just thinking about this idea of what we were just learning about the pleasure, right? That the idea of Geula is the pleasure of Hashem. So it really fits in with the purpose of creation. We call it with the word taiva. A taiva, like the only association we have with taiva is for pleasure. Like you have a taiva for something because it's going to bring you a great pleasure. So this word, a taiva, it automatically, it's not like the purpose is Hashem wants to have this pleasure. It's a taiva. It's nothing logical. It's not for something else like that. I don't know, just the word taiva just stuck, like, how do you say, makes more sense now when we think of Geula as like dir b'tachtonim in other, whatever meaning it has, but it's definitely this pleasurable experience for Hashem. And also it says here about responsibility. So it seems like we actually have more power in this than Hashem, because Hashem can't make the zero b'dachtainim. So we both have the desire for it, but it's in our hands. We're the only ones that could actually actualize it, because he gave us that power. He wants it to come from us. So like the ball is in our hands, like, you know, we have to say yes. He can't do it. So yeah.
Yeah.
אוקיי. עצמות ומהות שבו. כנ"ל בפרקים הקודמים, כלל גדול בפנימיות התורה הוא שמבשרי אחזה אלוקה, שמהאדם ונפשו אפשר ללמוד על האדם העליון כביכול. So, like we mentioned before, there is a big rule in the Pnimis Torah that we can learn from our flesh about the Eibashter, that from our physical and from our neshama can learn about the Eibashter, so-called. ובכללות, כשם שהאדם רואה בעצמו שאף שנפשו אחת היא, בכל מקום יש בה עומק לפנים מעומק. Like in general, like the person see on his neshama itself, we have only one soul, but anyway, there are a few depths and deeper and deeper and deeper. ובכללות, מבואר בתורת החסידות, שכוח המעשה הוא הכוח הכי חיצוני שבנפש. הרגשות והשכל המכוונים את המעשה הם פנימיים יותר. כוח הרצון הוא המנוע הפנימי של השכל והרגש, לפי שאין אדם לומד אלא במקום שליבו חפץ, ואין אדם אוהב אלא מה שיש לו רצון בזה. So like this. So the Chassidus explained that the Maisa is the most external koyach that we have in our soul. The feelings and the seichel, they are leading. The Maisa, they are more pnimis, and the Rotzen, he is the inner engine of the seichel and the feelings, because like we said, that a person, he learns where he likes to, what he likes to. And a person likes something because he has a rotzen in it. וכוח התענוג הוא המנוע הפנימי של הרצון. And the pleasure is the inner engine of the rotzen. שאין האדם רוצה אלא מה שיש לו תענוג מזה. והוא עצם מציאותו של האדם. Because the person wants only what he has pleasure from it. And that is the essence of the person. וכך כביכול למעלה באדם העליון. שאף שהשם אחד הוא, הרי האציל הקדוש ברוך הוא דרגות על גבי דרגות שבסדר השתלשלות, דרגות חיצוניות ודרגות פנימיות יותר, שכולם משתלשלים מעצמתו יתברך. And so the same in a way you can say about the Eibashter, the Eibashter is one, but he has different levels and more levels, like all the Seder Shashos, levels and levels. We have more outer levels and more pneumistic levels, but everything comes from the essence of the Eibashter. ובכללות, כוחות השכל והרגש והמעשה שבאדם מקבילים ל10 הספירות שבעולם האצילות. כוח הרצון שבאדם מקביל לדרגת הכתר שמעל כל הספירות, וכוח התענוג שבאדם מקביל לפנימיות הכתר. עתיק יומין ופנימיות עתיק, שבו נמצא עצמותו יתברך בעצמו שהוא מקור התענוגים. So you can say in general that the koichas of the seichel and the feelings and the meiser, but person, they are equivalent to the 10 spheres that we have in Atzilus, and the Rotzen is equivalent to the Keser that is above the spheres, and the pleasure by the person is equivalent to the pnimius of the Keser, which is Atik Yomin, Pnimiut Atik, and over there is the essence of the Eibashter, that he is the source of the pleasure. וכשם שהאדם למטה רוצה במעשים שיביאו לו תענוג, כך כביכול למעלה, הקדוש ברוך הוא רוצה במעשה המצוות, שעל ידי זה יתמלא התענוג העצמי שלו, שנתאווה הקדוש ברוך הוא להיות לו יתברך דירה בתחתונים. וכמובן כל זה באריכות בפרקים הקודמים. And like the person wants to in actions that will bring him pleasure, so too the Eibashter wants the mitzvahs, that through mitzvahs his inner pleasure will be fulfilled, that the Eibashter wanted this Kadosh Baruch Hu to be a Deir B'Zachtonim. And like we explained all this in length in the previous chapters. ועל דרך זה, מובן גם בנוגע ליהודי, שנפשו האלוקית היא חלק אלוקה ממעל ממש, ולכן היא בדוגמה של מעלה. וכל כוחות הנפשו של היהודי משתלשלים מהדרגות העליונות, מגבילים עליהם ומתקשרים עמהם. So is about the Yid, that his nefesh, our soul, is part of Hashem Mamash, חלק אלוקי ממש, and that's why she's also an example for what is happening up by Hashem. And all our koiches from a Yid, they're coming from the high levels, and they're equivalent to them, and they're connected to them. והנוגע לענייננו, כוח המלכות שבנפש, כוח המעשה בפועל, מתקשר עם מידת מלכותו של הקדוש ברוך הוא, על ידי קיום תרי"ג המצוות בפועל ממש בדרך קבלת עול. So when we speak about our matters, so we talk here about the כוח המלכות in our soul, that this is the כוח of actions, and this is connected to the malchus of the Eibishter, and through our fulfilling the tari"g mitzvahs in action with the Kabbalah's oil.
Whoops. My finger's flipped. Okay, give me a second. Let me unflip this. Let's do that again. Okay. One second. I'm up to this bit. This is the page I need to flip. Okay. No, this one's backwards. Okay.
Okay. הרצון העצמי שבנפש האלוקית היא בחינת היחידה, שאין לה אלא רצון אחד לייחודו של עולם. So the real rotzen of the nefesh, the essence of the rotzen of our soul is the yechida, and she wants only to be, her rotzen is only the will of Hashem. She wants all her rotzonos are connected only to Hashem. ההתמסרות המוחלטת לרצונו יתברך בתרי"ג המצוות. The complete devotion to the rotzen of Hashem through doing mitzvahs. והנקודה הפנימית של היהודי, I can't see the beginning of the page. Like the right side of the page is not on the screen. The right page of the screen, the right side of the page. Yeah. Okay, ההתמסרות המוחלטת, okay, והנקודה הפנימית של היהודי, כוח התענוג שבו, שהוא עצם מציאותו, מגביל כביכול לעצמותו יתברך והתענוג שלו, ועד שהתענוג שלו מזדהה ומתאחד עם התענוג של הקדוש ברוך הוא. So the most inner point of the Yid is his pleasure, that this is, over there is real essence, and this is equivalent to the etzem of the Eibishter and his pleasure, till the highest level where the pleasure of the person is becoming united with the pleasure of the Eibishter. ולכן, כשם שלמעלה כביכול, עיקר עניינו של הקדוש ברוך הוא, ועצם מציאותו כביכול, מתאווה להיות להתברך דירה בתחתונים, כך גם אצל היהודי למטה, עצם מציאותו, והנקודה העיקרית שבחייו, היא להיות להתברך דירה בתחתונים. ובסגנון הנ"ל, כל ימי חיי להביא לימות המשיח. So, like by the Eibishter, the main thing of the Eibishter, and the point of his metzius, of his essence, is his taiva to make a dira in בתחתונים. So too, by Yid, all his metzius and all his essence is to make a dira, and like we said before, it really meaning to bring Mashiach.
That's our whole essence. Okay, so I think we're going to stop here, and we'll pick up from here in our next.
Thank you very much.
Very welcome. Thank you. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
With Hashem, we will continue. In Yerushalayim, Mashiach now.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you very much. Tizkala Mitzvahs, Kol Tov.